Why, hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the GSL-English podcast. My name is, of course, Gideon, and I hope you are all well. I hope you've had a good week. If you are watching this when it is just released on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on YouTube, it is around 10 a.m. UK time. So I hope you're having a nice and relaxing weekend, and I hope that this is a good way to start your Sunday. So, of course, you are all very welcome back, and thank you for joining me as I natter on in English today with the goal, as always, of helping you to improve your natural English. And today, I think you'll come away with some new vocabulary. So I'm looking forward to what we're going to go through today. It's something a little bit different. So if you are listening, hello, I always like to give an audible hello to you if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But of course, if you are watching on YouTube, then hello. Thank you. I appreciate all of your support. Now, as I said, today we're going to look at something a little different. So we're going to try a bit of a different format in the podcast today because recently I happened upon a new poem that I really liked. Now, please don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say I'm a poet, and I didn't even know it. No, I'm not a poet at all. I don't really know too much about poetry. I appreciate it, but I'm not one of these people that can analyze poetry and really dissect into it about what it means and the feelings. I'm not very good at that. I never have been. But this poem that I'm going to present to you today really struck a chord with me. And by struck a chord, I mean that it made a connection with me. It had an impact on me. So I thought I would share with you. Now, before I present this particular poem to you, I want to ask you a question. And it could be seen as quite a deep question, really. So we're going to go there today. We're going to go a little bit deeper into our analysis of the English language. So I hope you're ready. Now the question is, it's more of a statement. Would you agree that often it's the simple things in life that make us most happy? Would you agree with that or not? You don't have to agree, but me personally, I do believe that it's the simple things in life that make us happy. Of course, there are bigger things that do bring an element of happiness. But in my experience, in my limited experience, I have learned that it's often just the simple things in life that really make you feel that depth of happiness, that inner happiness. Maybe it's time with family, certain memories. They're just simple, that they made you truly happy. Well, the poem today talks about an activity which is extremely simple. It's something that I would like to guess that most of us have done. It's something that we have all participated in, maybe as a child, a teenager, an adult, a grown-up, whatever. It's something that we have all done. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at a poem by a guy called George Krokos. Now, I'm not too sure on the pronunciation of that last name, so I'm sorry, George, if I just butchered that. George Krokos, I know you're probably never going to listen to this, but I really do love this poem. And I'll put a little link to it in the comments. But the poem is called Collecting Pebbles. It's simply entitled Collecting Pebbles. Now, I'm not going to talk any more about it. I'm first of all just going to read the poem in its entirety. So I'm just going to read the poem through. But as I read it, listen carefully. Don't worry about vocabulary. This first time that we go through it, I don't want you to start Googling the vocabulary thinking, I don't know what that means. Because don't worry. We're going to go through all of the vocabulary afterwards. But as we read it, I would like you to focus on your listening skills, but in the sense of trying to get the feeling, the sentiment of what this poem represents and its simplicity. See if you get that from this poem. So as I said, first of all, I'm just going to read the poem in its entirety. Then we are going to break down every paragraph and try to understand what it means together. And then I'll give you my final thoughts on this poem. So as always, before we start, try and find somewhere just to sit back, relax, and enjoy going through this poem with me. The idea is to improve our English, so take notes as we go through. If you've got any questions, please let me know in the comments if you are watching on YouTube, or to be honest, if you would like to say anything at all, just let me know in the comments. But if you are listening on Spotify or Apple, you can reach out to me via email, which I don't know about you, seems a bit dated these days, but I'm quite a dated guy. So email GSL-English1@gmail.com. The one, as avid listeners will know, infuriates me. If we can find the person that has GSL English, please, I will buy it off them. But I have to have GSL-English1@gmail.com. So if anybody has any skills to track down that email, let me know. Because it's one of those small things that just really bugs me. Okie dokie. Let's get into it. So I'm going to read the poem in its entirety, and then we're going to talk about it. It was from the sands of a windswept beach. I picked up pebbles that were easy to reach. They had attracted my attention while walking by. Their coloured, well-formed shape caught the eye. There were so many to choose from, I had to decide, in selecting those which my fancy would coincide. It's truly amazing what some people see in stone, a subject in which a lot of our imagination is prone. It was almost as if I'd found treasure on the seashore, and couldn't help myself as I looked around for more. The simple joy of collecting something that attracts the mind is an age-old activity which all people do have of some kind. There were the questions of how many would I take, and what, if anything, with them one could make. They were so abundant and all varied mostly in size, that it wasn't hard to imagine an object or visualize. It was also only the first location at which I found that I thought surely there must be others around. So with a sense of adventure, I looked forward to explore another beach while making my way home along the shore. There were several other stops made further on the way, collecting various coloured pebbles amidst the sea spray. Many times would I get my sandals wet along the coast, going amongst rocks and sand to the water's edge at most. It was with a sense of gain and loss, then after I'd taken enough, deciding right there and then to stop collecting, which was tough. The next step would be to think about and see what I would do with all those beautiful pebbles gathered while passing through. Maybe I could approach someone with the right flair and skill who could make something with them and imagination fulfill. That natural forming, eroding action of water, ice, wind and sand rarely requires the finishing touches of some other skillful hand. Perhaps in fashioning some jewellery using metal to bind a few pebbles together that are different or a similar kind. Or maybe I could just keep some myself and give the rest away, a gesture of friendship toward which our memories would play. Yes, it was from the sands of many a windswept, lonely beach I came across and collected pebbles that were within reach. Isn't it truly amazing what some people see in stone, a subject in which much of our imagination is prone? So there you go. That is the poem. Quite a beautiful poem, I'm sure you would agree. I'd be really interested at the outset to get your thoughts on that poem. Of course, we're talking about collecting pebbles. So we're going to go through verse by verse and break it down and see what we can take from this. But isn't it true that collecting pebbles on a beach is a simple task? I don't know whether you've ever done it, but you've gone on holiday to a stony beach And you just spend hours collecting pebbles, maybe on your own or with your family. And what are you looking for? You're looking for that perfect stone, aren't you? You're looking for that perfect pebble. And isn't it true? This might just be me, but when you are looking for that pebble, it becomes the most serious task, the most important thing you've got going on in your life at that point. It's a simple thing, but it becomes so important. We have to find the best pebble on this beach. And it becomes imperative that you do. So it's an interesting poem talking about the simplicity of that action. So let's go through, let's break it down and look at some of the vocabulary. So let's take that first section there. It was from the sands of a windswept beach. So in my mind, this is a beach in England, just because it's where I've been, maybe in Cornwall or Devon, and it describes it as being windswept. And to be windswept is a place that is exposed to strong winds. The wind is sweeping across the beach. So I get the idea that, you're wrapped up. Maybe got a scarf, a little bit cold. The wind is flying through. Maybe it's a sunny day, but it's windy. So that is the idea. Maybe you can picture that in your mind if you've visited England, or just try and picture a beach that you have been to and keep that idea in your mind. But it's windswept, exposed to a lot of wind. And, he said, I picked up pebbles. Pebbles are small stones, smooth and round. And that's happened by going in and out with the tide. The water has made those pebbles smooth and round. So it says here, I picked up the ones that were easy to reach. Just walking around, picking up the pebbles. But he says, I picked up the ones that attracted my attention while walking by. Their coloured, well-formed shape caught the eye. Now, if something catches our eye, it means that we find it attractive. We find it appealing or different enough to be noticed by us or someone else. It has caught our eye. And if we were to walk down the beach together, the stones that would attract your eye or catch your eye would be different to the ones that would catch my eye. It's a subjective thing, meaning that we all have our own opinions. So that is how he starts off. He sets the scene, walking down a windy beach, just picking up the pebbles that catch my eye. And then he goes on. There were so many to choose from, I had to decide. Of course, you could never count the amount of pebbles that were on a beach, so you couldn't pick them all up. But isn't it true that there are so many to choose from? And often that decision is very difficult to make. So he says, I had to decide or select those which my fancy would coincide. And often when we talk about fancying or someone, we are interested romantically in that person. But if we fancy something, it means that we want it. For example, right now I fancy a cup of tea because I forgot to make myself one before recording because I was in a little bit of a rush. So I fancy a cup of tea. It's something I want. And often we say, it's caught my fancy, which means it's caught your attention. You want it. You found it interesting or possibly attractive. So he says, selecting those which my fancy would coincide. So it would coincide with what he wanted. And this next statement is lovely. It's truly amazing what some people see in stone. A subject in which a lot of our imagination is prone. Now, if you remember, this statement, this sentence, this verse was also used at the end of the poem. Of course, when we talk about our imagination, it's what we think. And isn't it true that some people have the ability to look at something and they see a piece of art that they could make from it, or they see something beautiful? I don't tend to have that kind of mind. I couldn't look at a stone and see what it could be made into. But it says here, a subject in which a lot of our imagination is prone. If you are prone to something, it means that you are likely to do it. You have a habit of doing it or are susceptible to it. Sometimes we use this word in a negative context. You could be prone to feeling sick or catching the flu. It's something that you kind of habitually do. But in this instance, he's saying, for a lot of people, their imagination is prone to seeing what they could create out of something. Particularly in this instance, stone. I don't know whether you have a creative mind, but maybe you can relate to this, that you see something, an object, a stone, an interesting piece of wood, and you don't just see the piece of wood. Your imagination is prone to seeing what it could be, its potential. So in this second verse, basically saying, there's so many stones to choose from. So you just have to go with the ones that you like the look of and that you can see the potential of. It was almost as if I'd found treasure on the seashore, he continues. The seashore is, of course, the sandy, or in this case, stony or rocky area bordering the level with the sea. So he's walking along the seashore. And couldn't help myself as I looked around for more. Isn't it true that if we participate in this activity, you don't just walk along, find one stone and think, yeah, I got my stone. There's always that thought in your mind that, what if there is a better stone? What if there's one that is a bit of a better shape, is formed more eloquently and nicely? You always have that thought in your mind. Then he makes this statement, I keep looking around for more. I couldn't help myself. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't help but look for more. The simple joy of collecting something that attracts the mind. And there you go. Isn't this just a simple joy? Walking down the beach, just simply enjoying the process of looking for that perfect pebble. All other thoughts and worries seem to go out the mind. And he describes it as an age-old activity. And by saying that, this goes back many years. Viking times, they probably would have walked down the beaches and picked up stones. Throughout history, people have always walked down stony beaches and picked up stones. Sometimes I know when I was younger, we used to pick up the flat ones to skim across the sea. But he says, it's an age-old activity. It's a simple pleasure that nearly everybody has done throughout centuries, throughout decades. Everybody has done this. And if not, you know of it. Interesting, really interesting. And then the next part, kind of raises some questions. There were the questions of how many would I take? How many pockets have I got? How many can I possibly fit in my pockets? How many can I take with me? At what point do I say no? And then he goes, and what, if anything, with them one could make? So he's got a creative mind. He's thinking, well, what could I make from these stones? They were so abundant and all varied mostly in size. So, of course, walking down a beach, there's thousands of pebbles. There's hundreds of pebbles to choose from. So there is an abundant choice, meaning that there is many of something. That it wasn't hard to imagine an object or visualize. So he's suggesting here that there are so many of such varied shape, size and texture that it's quite easy for him to imagine an object or visualize something that he can make from them. Now, I guess that is dependent on your mindset. As I say, I don't think I would be very good at this. Walking down the beach, seeing something and thinking, right, well, I could make that into this. Seeing a stone and thinking what it could be. My wife does. She has that kind of creative, imaginative mind, but I don't. But for him, it wasn't hard to imagine what he could make from these stones that he's collected. The next paragraph. It was also only the first location at which I found that I thought surely there must be others around. My mum, when we used to go shopping, if she gave me some spending money, she'd always say, don't buy the first thing you see, Gideon. Which, of course, I didn't listen to. I did buy the first thing I see. But you'd regret it. Later on, you'd think, oh, man, look at that. I want that. But you've already bought the first thing you see. So here he's saying now that I was thinking, well, this is just the first beach I've been to. This is just the first area of beach that I've been to. What if there's more? What if there's other pebbles? Again, It's becoming a big thing, but it's just such a simple task of collecting pebbles. So what does he do? With a sense of adventure, I look forward to explore. That idea of having a sense of adventure is essential for humans, isn't it? It's fundamental. Having a sense of adventure, a sense is something that we perhaps feel. A person who has a sense of adventure likes doing unusual, exciting, and possibly dangerous activities. A sense of adventure, in this case, you think, yeah, let's go to another beach. If you don't have a sense of adventure, you'd say, no, this one beach is enough. There's plenty of stones here for us to choose from. But if you've got that sense of adventure, you think, let's go. There's other beaches. There's going to be more pebbles. Let's go. Let's look. Let's explore. So he says, with that sense of adventure, I went to another beach. Whilst heading home, he went to other beaches, maybe as a diversion, to find that perfect pebble. Is that something you would do? Do you have a sense of adventure to do that? As we go through this, think about how you would answer questions like that in English. Maybe write that question down now. Do I have a sense of adventure? And try answering it in English, maybe vocally, or just write down your answer. So then he says, there were several other stops made further on the way. So he kept on stopping. Couldn't help himself. Collecting various colour pebbles amidst the sea spray. The sea spray, as the waves crash, they kind of give you that fine mist of sea spray. And by saying amidst, he's saying in the middle of it. Many times I would get my sandals wet along the coast, going amongst rocks and sand to the water's edge at most. So when the tide is kind of coming in and your feet just get a little bit wet, that's where he stops. But that's often where the good stones are, where the freshly formed new stones are. So you kind of toy with the ocean, getting as close as you can. That's what he does, looking for that perfect stone. And then he talks about another sense here. It was with a sense of gain and loss. Then, after I'd taken enough, deciding right there and then to stop collecting, which was tough. So he's got a mix of emotions here. This sense of, all of these amazing pebbles that I've collected. But also, there is a time with anything where you have to call it quits. You have to stop. So he's got this feeling of happiness. I've got so many pebbles. But also loss because I've got to stop. There is a point where you've got to go home for dinner, so to speak. So, tough decision to make. But okay, so he's got his collection of stones. Now, the next step for him is to think about what to do with all of these beautiful pebbles that he's going, what's he going to make? What's he going to do with them? And then he presents some suggestions. He says maybe, there we go, a couple of spelling mistakes if you're watching on YouTube there. Just corrected those. But he says, maybe I could approach someone with the right flair. Now, if we have a flair for something, we have a special or instinctive aptitude or ability for doing something well. So you might have a flair for dancing. You're just good at it. You have that instinctive aptitude or ability to do it. So he says, maybe I could approach someone with the right ability and skill who could make something imaginative out of these stones. Then he goes, the natural forming, eroding action of water, ice, wind and sand. So he's talking about how nature has already kind of done something with these stones. Nature has already naturally eroded them into a beautiful shape. That smooth pebble, sometimes they look like a heart or they look like something. So this is quite a beautiful bit of poetry because he says here, that what nature has done to these pebbles rarely requires the finishing touches of another hand. Nature's done enough. And isn't that true that sometimes you see the way nature forms objects and erodes them, that it's a piece of art enough in itself? Then he goes on what he could do, with what someone could do with these pebbles. perhaps in fashioning some jewellery using metal to bind. If we fashion something or hear somebody fashioning these stones into jewellery, it's making them into a particular form. Excuse me. So, maybe you could fashion them into something, to jewellery, or just to use them for something in particular. Or instead of doing that, maybe I just keep them for myself and give the rest away. A gesture of friendship. A gesture is an action that shows friendship. So, yeah, I found these pebbles. Do you want them? I know if I gave my friends some pebbles that I found on the beach, they would throw them right back at me. But he's saying here, it's just the idea behind that. A gesture of friendship toward which our memories would play. It's a memory aid, isn't it? Particularly if you were walking along that beach with that person. That gesture, that action of giving them your favourite pebble. Kind of a beautiful thing to do. And then we conclude with the last paragraph, which I'll read one more time. Yes, it was from the sands of many a windswept, lonely beach I came across and collected pebbles that were within reach. Isn't it truly amazing what some people see in stone, a subject in which much of our imagination is prone? Absolutely stunning. Again, prone is something that we are kind of habitually able to do, or something that we are inclined to do. It's a very beautiful poem there. There's some great vocabulary, but I don't know what it highlights to you. Please let me know in the comments. What does this poem mean to you? Does it make you feel anything or nothing at all? Does it make you want to go walking on a beach? Were there any particular points that resonated with you? By doing that, by thinking about this poem and connecting it with your life, it's the best way to learn from this. So please let me know. Send me an email, GSL-English1@gmail.com. Or just let me know in the comments what you liked or what you didn't like about this poem. But to me, it represents the simplicity of certain actions that make us most happy. I can remember times of walking down the beach with my dad, with my mum, with my brother, and we'd all just collect stones together, collect pebbles together. And you'd run up, oh, Dad, look at this, I've got the most perfect pebble. And then your brother would come, no, look at my pebble. And in that moment, as a family, collecting pebbles is the most important thing. There's nothing else going on in the world apart from collecting those pebbles. So this poem to me represents that simplicity of life that can make us truly happy. So there you go. A little bit of a different podcast today that I wanted to present to you. I hope you enjoyed it. The idea was just to kind of give you some literature and some vocabulary. If you did enjoy it and you want me to kind of continue with this series and throw this style of podcast in now and then, let me know. But yeah, have a great week ahead, guys. Next week, tomorrow's Monday, if you're listening to this on Sunday. But if not, have a great week. And don't forget, just stay consistent with your English. If you don't have a lot of time throughout the week, just do something. Chuck one of my YouTube videos on, or chuck another podcast on, whatever it is. Just feed yourself with English every day. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Don't take yourself too seriously with it. It's an ongoing process that just takes time. But of course, if you do want to improve your lessons, improve your English with private lessons, that is something that I can help you with. So just let me know in the comments or send me an email and I'll give you all of the information that you need for that. But thank you again for watching, for listening. I truly appreciate your support. Have a great day and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one, guys.